I was standing in my own kitchen pouring tea for my son when I heard the words that stopped me cold. He thought I was still in the other room. His voice was quiet, almost casual. "She's dead weight now. We're cutting her loose." For a second, I couldn't breathe. The teapot felt suddenly heavy in my hand. My own son talking about me like I was something that needed to be discarded. I didn't walk away. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there listening from the kitchen doorway. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my family began to change. I'm grateful you clicked on this. Before we start, leave a comment. Where in the world are you right now? Let's build this community together. This story blends lessons with creative storytelling. Names and specifics are fictional for privacy, but what I'm sharing with you here, how to spot exploitation, set boundaries, protect yourself, matters deeply. Ready? Let's begin. I heard it while standing in my own kitchen, the teapot suddenly heavy in my hand. 10 words. That was all it took to dismantle 45 years of motherhood. The call had come that morning. "Just want to stop by, Mom, see how you're doing." 3 weeks since I'd last seen Brandon since Emma's spring concert at school, the one I'd attended alone in a half-empty auditorium while other grandparents sat in pairs. I'd clapped until my palms stung. I said yes. I always said yes. They arrived at 2 o'clock. Vanessa trailing behind him up the porch steps like an afterthought, her shoulders curved inward the way they always were lately. I held the screen door open, the same door Robert had hung 30 years ago, the one that still squeaked on humid days like this. Come in. Can I get you some tea?" Brandon nodded without looking at me, already scanning the living room the way he did every visit, as if inventorying what was still here and what might be gone. "Whatever you've got is fine, Mom." Vanessa lowered herself onto the edge of the floral sofa, the one Robert and I had bought in 1987. The fabric worn soft in the spots where we'd sat together, evening after evening. She folded her hands in her lap and stared at the coffee table. "I'll just be a minute," I said. In the kitchen, I filled the kettle at the sink and set it on the stove, the blue flame catching with a soft whoosh. I left the door cracked open, an old habit from when Brandon was small, so I could hear him playing in the next room, so I'd know if he needed me. But now I heard something different. "How much longer are we doing this?" Vanessa's voice low and tired. I froze my hand still on the faucet. Water drummed against the stainless steel basin too loud, and I twisted the knob until it slowed to a trickle. Brandon's answer came flat and calculated. "Not much longer. She's dead weight now. We're cutting her loose. Once the guardianship paperwork goes through, we can handle everything. The house, the accounts, all of it." The water ran cold over my fingers. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Vanessa started to say something. "You said that money was just for the house." But Brandon cut her off sharp and dismissive. "It was. Let it go." Silence filled the space between the kitchen and the living room. I stood there, gripping the empty teapot, understanding washing over me like the water I'd forgotten to turn off. Dead weight, cutting her loose. Guardianship. I turned off the faucet, filled the kettle, arranged the cups on the tray, 2 floral patterned ones from the set my mother had given me, as a wedding gift, delicate and somehow still intact after all these years. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. When I walked back into the living room, Brandon was checking his phone. Vanessa was staring at the wall where the family photos hung, Brandon's high school graduation, his wedding day, Emma as a baby. She didn't look at me. "Earl Grey, all right?" I asked. "Perfect, Mom." He didn't look up. We talked. The weather muggy for mid-June, wasn't it? Emma's grades good mostly, as one B in geometry. Traffic on I-40 always terrible near the mall. Normal things people say when they're pretending. I poured tea with steady hands, offered the shortbread cookies I'd baked on Thursday, the ones with the little fork marks pressed into the tops the way Robert always liked. Brandon ate 2. Vanessa ate none. They left 20 minutes later. Brandon kissed my cheek at the door. "You take care of yourself, Mom." His cologne, something expensive and unfamiliar, lingered in the hallway after he left. I closed the door, locked it, and stood in the hall for a long time, listening to the silence that filled the house, the kind of silence that used to feel peaceful and now felt something else entirely. The sun was lower when I finally moved, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor Robert had refinished the summer before his heart attack. I walked to the front window and sat in the rocking chair, the one I'd nursed Brandon in 44 years ago, rocking him through colic and thunderstorms and the 1,000 small fears of infancy. I sat there and let the words settle. Dead weight, Cutting her loose. Guardianship. My son, my only child. The boy I'd carried for 9 months, the one I'd read bedtime stories to until my voice went hoarse. The one I'd driven to baseball practice and helped with college applications, and given $85,000 to. $85,000. For the house, he'd said. For Emma's future. For a fresh start after the layoff he swore had blindsided him. I pressed my palm flat against the armrest, feeling the smooth wood beneath my skin, the grooves worn by my own hands over decades of use. This chair, this house, this life I'd built. He'd discussed discarding me as if I were furniture he no longer needed. The light shifted again, gold turning amber, amber turning gray. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. A car door slammed. The sounds of a Sunday evening in Asheville, ordinary and unchanging, while inside my chest, something fundamental had splintered. I didn't cry, didn't call anyone. I just sat there as the room sank into dusk, doing calculations I'd never imagined I'd need to make. When it was dark, I rose from the chair. My knees protested arthritis, nothing serious, just age, settling into my joints the way it did. I walked through the house, turning on lights, the kitchen, the hallway. The bedroom where Robert had died in his sleep 6 years ago, his hand still warm when I woke at dawn and found him gone. I opened the closet and pulled down the box from the top shelf, the one labeled important documents in my careful cursive. The writing faded now, but still legible. Birth certificates. The deed to the house, Robert's death certificate, insurance papers, and underneath it all the folder marked Brandon, house purchase 2019. I carried it to the kitchen table and sat down under the bright overhead light. Opened it. Stared at the papers inside the ones I'd signed without reading too carefully because he was my son, and you trust your son. Gift letter, $85,000. Gift with no expectation of repayment. The house, the accounts, all of it. I closed the folder, stood, made myself a cup of chamomile tea that I didn't drink. Watched the steam rise and dissipate. Somewhere in my mind, a list was forming. Names, numbers, steps. I didn't know all of it yet, but I knew this. What was coming wouldn't be forgiveness. It would be survival. Sleep didn't come that night. I didn't fight it. The darkness felt right for what I needed to do. I lay in bed counting cracks in the ceiling instead of sheep. The room felt different. Same furniture, same walls I'd painted lavender in 1998, same reading lamp on the nightstand with its crooked shade. But the air had changed. At 11 o'clock, I gave up. Pulled on Robert's old cardigan, the gray one, with the stretched pockets, and wandered. The house settled around me, speaking its nighttime language. The refrigerator hummed. The floorboards creaked under my weight. Through the kitchen window, the neighbor's porch light cast long shadows across my backyard, where Robert's tomato stakes still stood empty this late in June. I should have planted weeks ago. The teapot sat unwashed in the sink, a small act of rebellion. I moved through rooms I'd walked through 10,000 times, seeing them differently now. The living room where I'd served tea to my son while he planned to discard me. The dining table where we'd eaten Thanksgiving dinner, though. Now I remembered Brandon checking his phone between courses, Vanessa picking at her sweet potatoes, Emma asking to be excused early. How many years had I mistaken presence for connection? In the hallway, I stopped at the photo wall. Brandon at 8. Grinning, gap-toothed in his Little League uniform. I'd driven him to practice 3 times a week that summer, waited in the parking lot with a thermos of lemonade for after. Brandon at 16, trying to look tough in his junior prom tuxedo. I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. that night, waiting to hear his car in the driveway, relief flooding through me when I finally did. Brandon at 23, cap and gown, his arm around my shoulders. Robert had been so proud. Our boy, he'd said. College graduate, first in the family. Each frame marked a version of him I'd loved. But when had he changed? Or had he always been this person and I'd simply stopped seeing clearly? Or maybe, and this thought arrived cold and sharp, maybe I'd never seen him at all, only the son I needed him to be. At 2 in the morning, I walked into the small office Robert had used for paying bills. His desk calendar still showed March 2018, the month before he died. I'd never had the heart to change it. I pulled the filing cabinet drawer open. It squeaked needed oil had needed it for years. Inside folders hung in neat rows labeled in my careful handwriting. Utilities, insurance, medical, house deed. And there, between mortgage and taxes, Brandon, house purchase 2019. 5 years ago. He'd come to me with spreadsheets, earnest explanations about interest rates and equity. The kitchen table had been covered with papers, numbers I didn't fully understand, but nodded along to because he was my son, and you trust your son. I just need help with the down payment, Mom. We'll pay you back when we can. Emma needs her own room. Vanessa's job is close to that neighborhood. It's a good school district. I'd withdrawn $85,000 from my retirement account. Driven myself to the bank, asked for a cashier's check, handed it to my son along with a letter I'd written in my neatest script. Gift with no expectation of repayment, because you are my son. Sitting there in the 2 a.m. quiet, I read those words again. The ink had faded slightly, but the meaning remained clear. Because you are my son. That son didn't exist anymore, or perhaps he never had. I spread the folder's contents across the desk. Not just the gift letter. Bank statements with notes in the margins, his handwriting, not mine, tracking withdrawals I didn't remember authorizing. Birthday cards I'd sent returned to sender wrong address, though he'd never given me a new one. Photos of Emma and Jake I'd mailed off, never acknowledged. In the back of the folder, tucked behind everything else, I found something I'd forgotten, the emergency credit card. I'd added Brandon as an authorized user 2 years ago after he'd mentioned needing to help Vanessa's mother with medical bills. Just in case something happens and you can't reach me, I'd said. For real emergencies. The statements were there, folded into thirds. I unfolded them. June 2023. Best Buy $847. Expedited electronics $1,200. September 2023. Riverside Steakhouse $230. Mountain View Resort $2,400. December 2023. GameStop $680. I went through them all. 2 years of charges, electronics, restaurants, a weekend at a resort, nothing that looked like a medical emergency, nothing that looked like helping anyone but himself. $12,247. The numbers blurred. I set the statements down, pressed my palms flat against the desk. The wood was cool under my hands, solid and real, while everything else dissolved. Dawn came gray through the office window. I'd been sitting in that chair for 6 hours, surrounded by papers that told a story I'd refused to read. Not just the house money, not just the credit card. All of it together laid out in front of me like evidence in a trial I'd been too willfully blind to attend. The birthday cards. The missed holidays, the phone calls that went unanswered, the times Emma had said, "Dad says we're too busy," when I'd invited them for Sunday dinner, the way Brandon always had somewhere else to be. I thought of last Christmas. I'd bought gifts for everyone, a cashmere scarf for Vanessa, a science kit for Jake, a journal for Emma, a new tackle box for Brandon. I'd wrapped them carefully, driven them over 3 days before the holiday. Brandon had met me at the door, hadn't invited me in. "We'll open them Christmas morning, Mom. Things are just hectic right now." I'd never heard if they opened them at all. The evidence of my own blindness covered the desk. I'd been so busy being grateful for whatever scraps of attention he threw my way that I'd never asked why I was grateful in the first place. Why a mother should feel thankful for the bare minimum from her only child. The word he'd used yesterday came back to me sharp and clear. Guardianship. I turned to Robert's old computer, ancient, now barely functional, but it's still connected to the internet. I typed the word into the search bar. Read. Then read more. Legal authority over another person's decisions. Medical, financial, personal. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my life. The kitchen window showed me a street waking up. A jogger passed by. Someone's sprinkler system clicked on water arcing across a lawn that was already too green for mid-June. Sunday's ordinary rhythms as if the world hadn't tilted on its axis. I made coffee. Not because I wanted it, but because it was 5 in the morning, and that's what you did at 5 in the morning. The pot gurgled and hissed. On the counter, I found a notepad, the kind with a magnetic strip on the back stuck to the refrigerator for grocery lists. I pulled it down, clicked open a pen. At the top of the page, I wrote a single name, Patricia Reynolds. Not a list of complaints, those were old news now. Not a list of hurts, there were too many, and they didn't matter anymore. This was something else. This was a list of phone numbers, of people who could help with things I didn't fully understand yet, but knew I would need to learn. Attorney, financial advisor, real estate agent maybe. The coffee finished brewing. I poured a cup, held it between both hands, felt the warmth seep into my palms. Outside, the sky was turning from gray to pale blue. Somewhere in South Asheville, my son was probably still sleeping, his wife beside him, my grandchildren in their beds. They thought they had time, thought I was just a problem to be managed, a burden to be cut loose. They didn't know not yet that I'd stopped waiting for them to decide my future. I looked down at the notepad. Patricia's name stared back at me. 2 years since we'd spoken. She'd been Robert's attorney, helped me with the estate paperwork after he died, called me every few months for a while just to check in. I'd stopped answering, embarrassed by my loneliness, afraid she was just being polite. But Patricia wasn't polite. Patricia was sharp, fair. Robert had trusted her completely. The coffee was strong and bitter, exactly how I needed it. When the clock showed 6 a.m., a reasonable hour even on a Monday, I would make the call. But for now, I sat in my kitchen as the light changed from blue to gold, and I let myself feel it, not just the betrayal, but what lay beneath it, clarity. Monday morning, I made coffee, ate toast. At exactly 9 o'clock, I dialed Patricia Reynolds. The list sat beside my coffee cup, Patricia's name at the top in my careful handwriting. Below it, other names I might need eventually, financial advisors, real estate agents, names I'd copied from the yellow pages last night while the rest of Asheville slept. But Patricia first. Patricia, who'd played bridge with me and 3 other women every Thursday afternoon for a decade before Robert died. Patricia, who'd handled his estate with such quiet efficiency that I'd barely had to think during those first terrible months. Patricia, who'd called every few months after that, just to check in until I'd stopped answering, embarrassed by my loneliness, afraid I was becoming a burden to her too. I hadn't spoken to her in 2 years. She answered on the second ring. "Dorothy, is everything all right?" Her voice, same as I remembered, precise and warm at once, made something loosen in my chest. I gripped the phone tighter. "I need legal advice." Silence, not the uncomfortable kind, the listening kind. "What's happened?" I told her. Not everything, not the hurt, not the hours I'd spent last night staring at photographs. Just the facts. My son had mentioned guardianship in a conversation he didn't know I'd overheard. I was concerned about my financial autonomy. I needed to understand my options. I kept my voice steady, factual, the way you'd report a car accident to an insurance company. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then her voice changed, sharpened into something I recognized from the one time I'd watched her in court, when Robert had needed a witness statement for a property dispute. "Dorothy, listen to me carefully. Don't tell anyone we're meeting, especially not your son. Can you do that?" "Yes." "Good. I need you to gather every financial document you have. Bank statements, property, deeds, investment accounts, credit cards, everything. Anything with your name or your son's name on it. Can you do that today?" "I already started." "Of course you did." A pause. "How about tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock at the Vault, that coffee shop on Pack Square? Do you know it?" "I know it." "Come alone. Bring everything." "And Dorothy?" Her voice softened slightly. "I'm glad you called." After we hung up, I sat there for a moment, the phone still in my hand. Through the kitchen window, the Monday morning world continued, a mail truck turning the corner. Mrs. Henderson across the street watering her azaleas. Ordinary life proceeding while mine quietly rearranged itself. I set the phone down and looked at the list again. One name crossed off. 23 hours until I'd sit across from Patricia and lay it all out. But first I had work to do. I turned the dining table into a war room. The property deed came first. Single-family home, 1847 Haywood Road, West Asheville. Purchased 1982. Dorothy Margaret Brennan, sole owner. Robert's name had been on it once, but estate law had transferred it entirely to me when he died. My name. My house. The relief of seeing that in black and white surprised me. Bank statements next. I kept meticulous records. Robert had taught me that, so I had 6 years' worth filed by date in the cabinet. I spread them across the table, searching for patterns I'd been too trusting to see before. There, March 2021, withdrawal $5,000. The memo line read family loan, B. I remembered that. Brandon had said something about Vanessa's car needing repairs, transmission, or engine, something expensive. He'd pay me back by summer, he'd said. He never had. June 2022, another $3,000. Emergency. B. What emergency I couldn't even remember now. August 2023, $4,000. Help with expenses. B. Small amounts, spread out over years. Nothing that would raise alarms at the bank, nothing that would make me question my own son. Just enough to add up to something I'd never calculated until now. I wrote the numbers down on a yellow legal pad. $5,000, $3,000, $4,000, more going back further. By the time I finished the total, made my hand pause over the paper. $28,000, plus the $85,000 for the house. $113,000. I stared at the number, tried to imagine it as something other than what it was, the cost of my own willful blindness. The credit card statements came next. Emergency visa authorized user Brandon Brennan. I'd added him 2 years ago after he'd mentioned something about Vanessa's mother having medical bills. Just in case something happens and you can't reach me, Mom. For real emergencies. I pulled out the most recent statements, the ones I'd looked at last night but hadn't fully processed. Now I read each line carefully. April 2024. The Ivy Asheville. $187. Upscale restaurant downtown. I'd never been there. The portions were supposedly tiny. Brandon had once said laughing about it. Yet he'd charged $187 for a meal. May 2024 Coastal Resort and Spa Charleston. $2,400. Charleston. I flipped through my calendar. May 15th to 18th. The weekend, Brandon had called to say he was completely swamped at work and couldn't make it to Mother's Day brunch at the church. March 2024, Best Buy Asheville, $1,200. February 2024, Mountain Ridge Golf Club, $450. January 2024, GameStop, $680. Golf club membership, video games, electronics I'd never seen at his house. I didn't crumple them in anger. I didn't cry. I simply clipped them together neatly and slid them into a manila folder I labeled Patricia in black marker. Evidence. That's what this was. Evidence that my instinct, the one I'd buried under excuses and maternal guilt, had been right all along. By noon, I had 3 folders. One labeled property and assets, one labeled banking history, one labeled credit and loans. I made a sandwich I didn't eat, poured a glass of water I barely touched, sat at the dining table surrounded by paper evidence of systematic betrayal, and felt something settle in me that wasn't quite peace, but was close to it, certainty. My phone buzzed. I picked it up, saw Brandon's name on the screen. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. How are you doing?" I stared at the message. Imagined him typing it with one hand while scrolling through something else with the other, a performative gesture of filial concern that cost him nothing and kept me compliant. I set the phone down without answering. Out the window, the afternoon sun angled through the maple tree Robert had planted the year Brandon was born. The leaves were full and green, casting moving shadows across the floor. I remembered Robert saying, "It'll outlive us both, Dot. Still be here long after we're gone." He'd been right about the tree, wrong about so many other things. I looked at the clock. 24 hours until I sat across from Patricia and spread these folders on a coffee shop table. 24 hours to decide if I was overreacting or if I'd finally started paying attention. But I already knew. Somewhere between finding the gift letter at 2 a.m. and writing Patricia's name on a list at dawn, I'd stopped questioning my own judgment. The folders sat stacked neatly on the table. 3 folders containing the truth I'd spent years avoiding. Tomorrow, I'd show them to someone who could help me do something about it. Tonight, I'd sleep. Not well, probably, but better than the night before because now I wasn't alone in knowing. I picked up my phone again. This time, I opened a new message to Patricia. "Thank you for taking my call. I'll see you tomorrow at 10. Her reply came fast. "Bring comfortable shoes. We might be there a while." I smiled for the first time in 2 days. Not a happy smile. Something else, grim satisfaction maybe. The feeling of a decision made a path, chosen a woman who'd finally stopped waiting for permission to protect herself. Outside, Mrs. Henderson finished watering her flowers and waved in my direction. I waved back this ordinary gesture in an ordinary afternoon. Everything looked the same as it had yesterday morning, but I was different. And different I was learning was a kind of power all its own. Tuesday morning, I walked into the vault 20 minutes early. Patricia was already there. She'd claimed the corner table behind the espresso machine laptop, open legal pad beside it. 2 cups of coffee, weighted, 1 black one with cream. She remembered. Dorothy. She stood, squeezed my hand. Sit. The cafe hummed with morning energy students over textbooks, a man typing on his phone. Normal life carrying on while mine quietly shifted. I set my bag down, 3 folders inside. Patricia slid the coffee toward me. Start from the beginning. What exactly did your son say? I told her, Sunday afternoon, the conversation I'd overheard. His exact words, she's dead weight now. When are we cutting her loose? Once the guardianship paperwork goes through, we can handle everything. Her pen moved fast across the legal pad. You're certain he said guardianship? I'm certain. All right, show me what you brought. I pulled out the folders. Patricia worked methodically, handling each document with careful attention. The property deed first. She scanned it, nodded. Your name only, good. She set it aside. The bank statements next. I watched her read through the years. The $5,000 withdrawal in March 2021. The $3,000 in June 2022. The $4,000 in August 2023. She didn't comment, just kept reading, jotting numbers on her pad. Then the folder labeled Brandon, House Purchase 2019. She read the gift letter twice. $85,000. Yes. Did your son ever promise to pay you back? He said he'd pay me back when he could, but I told him it was a gift. Has he ever mentioned paying you back since made any payments? No. Patricia wrote something down. So legally, this was a completed gift. You can't claw it back. She paused. But it's part of a pattern, and patterns matter. She returned to the bank statements, adding numbers. Just from what I'm seeing here, you've given your son, or he's taken at least $100,000. The number hung between us. And then there's this. She opened the last folder. Patricia spread the credit card statements across the table, her finger tracing the charges. Best Buy, the Ivy, Coastal Resort and Spa, Mountain Ridge Golf Club. Did you authorize your son to use this card regularly? Only for emergencies, for the grandchildren. She turned her laptop toward me. A spreadsheet with dates and amounts. This isn't emergencies, this is systematic. Look at the dates, look at the amounts. Charges every few weeks. Restaurants I'd never been to. Electronics I'd never seen. A pattern that had nothing to do with sick grandchildren. I'll need to verify the exact number. But from what I'm seeing, we're looking at over $10,000. Possibly more. My coffee had gone cold. I wrapped my hands around it anyway. I added him as an authorized user 2 years ago. He said it was just in case. Did you ever review these statements? They came in the mail. I stopped. How could I explain that I'd filed them away without looking, trusting that if something was wrong, someone would tell me? I should have looked closer. That's not the point. Patricia closed the laptop. The point is, your son has abused that responsibility. From what I'm seeing, this may constitute financial exploitation of an elder. The words landed heavy. Financial exploitation. Elder. What does that mean? It means your son has been systematically taking money from you through multiple channels over several years, and the mention of guardianship suggests he may be planning to formalize that access. The cafe sounds seemed far away, the espresso machine, the typing. I need to check a few things with your bank, Patricia said. Can you come back Thursday, same time, same place? What are you looking for? She met my eyes. Confirmation of what I'm thinking. And if I'm right, Dorothy, this might be bigger than you realize. I sat in my car afterward, hands on the steering wheel, not moving. The morning was bright and warm tourists wandering Pack Square. Asheville carrying on its ordinary Tuesday business while my world rearranged itself. My phone buzzed, a text from Brandon. Hey, Mom tried calling yesterday but didn't hear back. Everything okay? Let's do lunch this week. I stared at the screen. Tried calling yesterday when I'd been documenting evidence. Let's do lunch as if we were normal, as if Sunday hadn't happened, as if he hadn't called me dead weight. The casual cruelty made my hands shake. I typed a single line, "This week's not good. Talk soon." His reply came fast, "No worries. Soon then. Love you, Mom. Love you, Mom." I set the phone down and stared at those 3 words until they stopped looking like words at all. A door I'd been pushing against for years had opened, and on the other side was a room I didn't want to enter but knew I had to. Patricia had seen it. Systematic, she'd called it. Financial exploitation, bigger than you realize. I started the car and drove home through streets I'd driven for 40 years, past the elementary school where Brandon learned to read, past the library where I'd taken him for Saturday story time, past the park where Robert taught him to ride a bike. All those years of loving him, of sacrificing, of being the mother I thought I should be. And somehow I'd become dead weight. But Patricia had believed me, had said we'd meet Thursday. In that I heard something I hadn't had in days, an ally. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table where sunlight streamed through the window. My phone lay silent. Brandon's message still glowing on the screen. Love you, Mom. Thursday, I told myself. Thursday, I'd know more. Until then, 1 hour at a time, one breath at a time, one small act of self-preservation at a time. I made coffee, Robert's old Duke mug, sat in the quiet house. The coffee was hot and strong. I drank it slowly, tasting nothing. Thursday came slower than I'd expected. When I walked into the vault at 10 o'clock, Patricia didn't wait for me to sit down. $12,247. I stopped halfway to the chair. That's what your son charged to your emergency credit card over 24 months. She gestured to the seat. Sit. You need to see this. She turned her laptop toward me. A spreadsheet filled the screen, organized into categories. Restaurants, $3,400. The Ivy, Curate, Chestnut. Upscale places I'd never been to. Charges from $87 to $230. Electronics, $2,800. Best Buy 3 visits. GameStop, a laptop, gaming equipment, a 65-inch television. Travel, $4,200. Mountain View Resort, twice. And there, Coastal Resort and Spa Charleston, $2,400. May 15th to 18th. Mother's Day weekend, I said. Patricia nodded. Yes, I'd fallen in the garden that Friday before twisted my ankle badly staking tomatoes. I'd called Brandon Saturday morning, voice shaking from pain, asking if he could help me get to urgent care. I'm completely swamped, Mom. Can you call an Uber? He'd been at a spa resort in Charleston with my credit card. Luxury goods, $1,847. Golf club membership. Expensive whiskey. Designer sunglasses. A leather jacket. Patricia opened another tab, a much shorter list. September 2022, CVS, $47, Emma's prescription. November 2022, Academy Sports, $63, Jake's cleats. March 2023, Staples, $85 school supplies. June 2023, Urgent Care, $85 copay. Total $280. $280 for the grandchildren, $12,000 for Brandon. This is systematic financial exploitation, Patricia said. In North Carolina, it's a crime. She pulled documents from her briefcase. Did you ever give Brandon power of attorney? The question caught me off guard. I'd almost forgotten. 4 years ago, gallbladder surgery. I was scared Robert had been gone less than a year. I wanted someone who could make medical decisions if something went wrong. Medical and financial. The lawyer said it was standard, both in one document. I remembered signing it in the hospital, Brandon's hand on my shoulder. He said it would make things easier. Dorothy, with that authority, Brandon can access your bank accounts, make financial decisions, even change beneficiaries without your knowledge. The room tilted. But I just wanted... I know. But legally, the authority exists until you revoke it. She pushed a form toward me. Which we're doing now. 1 page. Simple. I hereby revoke all power of attorney previously granted. My hand shook as I signed, not from fear, from anger. Your will, Patricia said. Whose executor and beneficiary? Brandon. Everything goes to him. Would you like to change that? I thought of Emma, Jake. The grandchildren Brandon used as excuses but never helped. Yes, split between Emma and Jake, in trust until they're 21. And Brandon. Nothing. She wrote it down without comment. I signed, she witnessed. 3 minutes to undo 45 years of assumption. Patricia put the documents away, then hesitated. There's something else. A colleague mentioned Brandon came to see him last week. He's an elder law attorney. Brandon was asking about emergency guardianship procedures. My coffee cup slipped. I set it down carefully. What does that mean? It means your son is exploring options to have you declared mentally incapacitated. If he succeeds, he'd control every aspect of your life where you live your medical care, all finances. You'd lose your status as an autonomous adult. The cafe sounds faded. The credit card is theft, I said slowly. But guardianship is about taking away your humanity. Patricia leaned forward. He's building a case. The debt makes you look irresponsible. If he can claim you're confused, forgetful, he's going to say I'm not competent. He's laying the groundwork. We need to move faster. I sat there, hands flat on the table. Solid. Real. All those years of excuses. He's busy. He's stressed. All those times I'd told myself I was too demanding. And all along, he'd been positioning me as a problem to be solved. Dead weight to be cut loose. What do we do next? Patricia pulled out a notebook. First, secure your assets. Change all bank passwords. Remove Brandon as authorized user everywhere. I'll send the POA revocation to your bank and doctors today. All right. Second, document your competence. Full medical evaluation cognitive testing. If he files for guardianship, we need proof you're of sound mind. When? This week, I'll make calls. She looked up. And Dorothy, don't tell him what we're doing. Not yet. Let him think everything is normal. You want me to pretend? I want you to be strategic. We're gathering evidence and protecting you legally. When we're ready, when we have everything in place, then we confront him. I nodded slowly. This wasn't about emotion. This was survival. I stood, gathered my purse. The folder felt heavy. Patricia, thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've got work ahead. Outside, the June sun was bright. Normal people doing normal things, shopping, walking dogs, drinking coffee. I got in my car and sat for a moment, hands on the wheel. $12,247. A power of attorney I'd signed out of love and fear. A son consulting lawyers about declaring me incompetent. I started the engine. First, stop the bank. Change every password, every PIN, every security question. Remove Brandon's name from everything. Second, my doctor's office. Schedule whatever tests Patricia needed. Third, home. To begin the work of becoming a fortress impenetrable, strategic ready. I pulled out of the parking space. In the rearview mirror, the vault disappeared behind me. Ahead, the road stretched clear. For the first time in days, maybe years, I knew exactly where I was going. Not back to who I'd been. That woman was gone, dissolved somewhere between Sunday's overheard conversation and Thursday's spreadsheet of betrayal. Forward to whoever I was becoming. Someone my son hadn't counted on. Someone who wouldn't be cut loose. I drove toward the bank hand, steady on the wheel, and let myself feel it. Not rage, not grief. Clarity, cold and sharp and absolute. He'd made his move. Now I'd make mine. Friday morning, I did 3 things. Ordered a Ring doorbell, changed my bank passwords, and learned how to use the silence notifications feature. Patricia had been specific, don't block his number. Let him text. We need evidence. So I learned. 74 years old, and I was becoming fluent in the language of strategic silence. The installer arrived at 2 p.m., a young man named Marcus, who looked surprised when he saw I'd already measured the door frame and marked exactly where the device should go. You did your homework, he said. I always do. He mounted it in 20 minutes, showed me how to use the app Live View Motion Alerts 2-way audio. I could see anyone who approached my door before they saw me. I could choose whether to answer. Choice. That's what I was building back, one small piece of technology at a time. After he left, I stood in my living room testing the camera view on my phone. The porch steps, the front walk, the street beyond. Clear and sharp, even in the afternoon shadows. For the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe. The phone settings took longer to figure out. I sat at the kitchen table with my reading glasses and a cup of tea, navigating through menus until I found it. Silence notifications from this contact. Brandon's name, I tapped it. The switch turned gray, silent but not blocked. His messages would still arrive, I'd still have the record, but my phone wouldn't light up every time he decided I needed managing. As if on cue, a text appeared. No sound, no vibration, just silent text on my screen. "Hey, Mom, haven't heard from you in a few days. Everything okay? Give me a call." I took a screenshot, saved it to a folder I'd labeled Evidence, set the phone down without responding. Patricia's words echoed strategic silence. I drank my tea and watched the light change through the window. Outside, Mrs. Henderson was weeding her flower beds, methodical and content. Normal Friday afternoon activities while I quietly fortified my life against my own son. The strangeness of it should have hurt more. Maybe it would later. Right now, it just felt necessary. First Bank of Asheville was quiet when I arrived at 3 o'clock. I'd banked here for 42 years, since Robert and I opened our first joint account in 1982. Both of us nervous and excited about combining our money, about becoming a we instead of two separate I's. The teller knew me by name. "Mrs. Brennan, what can we do for you today?" "I need to update my authorized users, remove my son from all accounts." Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh, should we be concerned about fraud?" "Not yet," I said calmly. "I'm just preventing future problems." She nodded, typed on her computer. "I'll need to see your ID and have you sign a few forms." 10 minutes. That's how long it took to erase Brandon's access to accounts that held 40 years of careful savings. The emergency fund Robert and I had built quarter by quarter. The modest retirement account from my years as a school secretary. The checking account where my Social Security deposited each month. All of it now mine alone again. The teller slid the final form across the counter. "All set. Is there anything else?" "Yes. I'd like to change my online banking password and security questions." "Of course." She walked me through it. New password, a random string of letters and numbers I wrote on a card I'd keep in my wallet, not saved on any computer. New security questions with answers. Brandon couldn't guess my mother's middle name, the street I grew up on my first job. Details from before he existed. A life that was mine before it was his. When I walked out of the bank, the afternoon sun felt warmer somehow. The weight I'd been carrying, the constant low-grade anxiety that Brandon could access my money whenever he wanted lifted. I'd cut the strings. One by one, methodically, I was cutting every string he'd attached to me. Saturday passed quietly. I cleaned the house, watered the garden, made a batch of soup I wouldn't eat much of. Normal weekend tasks that felt almost meditative in their ordinariness. My phone sat on the counter, face down silent. Around 8 p.m., I flipped it over. 7 missed calls, 12 text messages. Mom called me back. "Getting worried. You okay? Seriously, why aren't you answering?" Then around 7. "What happened with the bank account?" They said I was removed as authorized user. "Mom, this isn't funny. Call me now." "I'm your son. You can't just lock me out of everything." The messages grew sharper, more entitled. I read them like weather reports from a distant storm, documenting feeling nothing but a strange, detached clarity. I took screenshots of everyone, added them to the evidence folder now containing 23 items. Then I set the phone down and went to bed. Sunday morning came soft and golden. I made coffee, carried it to the front window, and stood looking out at my quiet street. Asheville waking up slow the way it did on weekends. A jogger passed. Someone walking a golden retriever. Sunday morning peace. My phone buzzed a notification from the Ring app. Motion detected at front door. I opened the app. Brandon's face filled the screen close and distorted by the wide-angle lens. He looked tired, angry. He raised his hand and knocked. I stayed by the window 40 feet from the door, watching him through my phone. He knocked again, harder, waited, looked at the Ring camera directly as if he could see me through it. "Mom, I know you're home. Your car's in the driveway." His voice came through the speaker, tinny and small. I could turn it off with a tap. I tapped. Silence. He knocked a third time, stood there a full minute, then turned and walked back to his car. I watched him go the set of his shoulders, the way he yanked his car door open, the aggressive way he backed out of my driveway. My phone lit up with another text. "Your car is in the driveway. I know you're home. Why won't you answer?" I set the phone on the windowsill and went to the kitchen, made fresh coffee, scrambled eggs, toast with butter and raspberry jam. I ate slowly, tasting everything. The butter melting, the sweetness of jam, the coffee hot and strong, exactly the way I liked it. Outside, the Sunday morning world continued without me needing to explain myself to anyone. Brandon's text still glowed on my phone screen when I picked it up to clear my breakfast plate. "I know you're home." Yes, I thought, I am home. My home, not his. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I was setting the schedule. Answering on my timeline, not his. Opening my door when I chose to, not when someone demanded it. The Ring doorbell had been $99 on Amazon. The bank changes had cost me nothing but 30 minutes. The silence notifications were just a few taps on a screen. But what they'd bought me was priceless. The right to be unavailable. The right to my own space. The right to say no without saying anything at all. I rinsed my dishes, poured another cup of coffee, and settled into Robert's old recliner with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. The house was quiet. My phone was silent. Outside, the world could wait. Everything now would happen on my time, not his. Linda's soup was still warm. We sat at my kitchen table, and for the first time in days, I told someone the whole truth. She'd appeared at my door just after 6, carrying a ceramic pot wrapped in a dish towel. "Saw Brandon's car here this morning," she said simply. "Figured you might not have eaten." Linda Henderson. My neighbor for 11 years, ever since she and her husband Tom moved into the blue house 2 doors down. Tom had died 3 years ago heart attack while mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning. She'd found him when she came out with lemonade. We'd been friendly before that. Coffee, occasionally holiday cards. After Tom died, we became something more, not quite friends, but not quite just neighbors either. The kind of relationship built on proximity and mutual understanding of loss. "Chicken noodle," she said now, ladling it into bowls. "Nothing fancy. It's perfect." We ate in silence for a few minutes. The soup was good homemade with thick egg noodles and chunks of real chicken, the kind of food that felt like care in a bowl. Finally, Linda set her spoon down. "You want to talk about it?" And somehow I did. I told her about Sunday, the conversation I'd overheard, Brandon's words, dead weight, cutting her loose guardianship, the credit card charges I'd discovered, the power of attorney I'd revoked, the will I'd changed. Linda listened without interrupting, her expression carefully neutral. When I finished, she asked one question: "How much did he take?" "Over 12,000 I have proof of. Probably more I haven't found yet." Linda nodded slowly, picked up her spoon, set it down again. "Mine took 15. The words landed quietly, but they changed everything. "My daughter, Jessica," Linda said. 3 years ago, right after Tom died, she came to visit first time in months. Said she was worried about me, wanted to make sure I was okay financially. She stared into her soup bowl. I was so grateful. Someone cared. Someone was checking on me. Tom had just died, I was drowning in paperwork and grief, and here was my daughter offering to help. What happened? She convinced me to take out a home equity loan. $15,000. Said her son, my grandson Tyler, needed surgery, something not covered by insurance. She showed me medical bills, appointment cards. It all looked real. Linda's voice stayed steady, matter of fact. I signed the papers. The money went into my account, then right out again. Direct transfer to Jessica's account so she could handle the medical payments directly. She said it would be easier that way, less for me to worry about. But there was no surgery. There was a boyfriend, Jason. They'd met online, had some business idea, importing furniture from Indonesia or some nonsense. The $15,000 went to him. Tyler was fine, never needed surgery. I set my spoon down. How did you find out? Tyler called me 6 months later, said he missed me, asked why I never came to his basketball games anymore. I said I'd been giving his mom space while he recovered from surgery. Linda's laugh was bitter. He had no idea what I was talking about. I confronted Jessica. Linda continued. Expected shame, apologies, maybe tears. You know what she said? She looked up at me. You were never going to use that equity anyway. What difference does it make? The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She came back 8 months ago, said Jason's business needed $30,000 more. A sure thing. Would I consider another loan? Linda shook her head. I said no. Haven't seen her since. 8 months. 8 months, no calls, no visits. She moved from worried daughter to ghost the minute I stopped being useful. We sat there, 2 women at a kitchen table, looking at each other across soup bowls and shared betrayal. We weren't bad mothers, I said finally. No, we weren't. We loved them, gave them everything we had. We did. What they did after... I struggled for the words. That's on them, not us. Linda reached across the table, squeezed my hand once. What they did after is on them, not us. The repetition made it feel like a vow, like something we were declaring into existence, a truth we'd both been too guilty or too afraid to claim until now. Linda pulled her hand back, picked up her spoon. I've been thinking about downsizing. The change of subject was deliberate, gentle. I followed her lead. The house is too big, she continued. 4 bedrooms, Tom's tools still in the garage. Jessica's old room exactly like she left it when she moved out 20 years ago, like some kind of shrine to a person who doesn't exist anymore. Where would you go? There's a place Blue Ridge Retirement Living over near Tunnel Road. Independent living, not assisted care. Apartments, 1 or 2 bedrooms. Small community. They have activities if you want them, privacy if you don't. She stirred her soup. I went to an open house last month, just looking. But there was a woman there, Betty, maybe 68. She'd moved in 6 months ago, said it was the best decision she'd ever made. No more yard work, no more maintaining a house that was too big for one person. She has friends now, plans, a book club. It sounds nice. It sounds like possibility. Linda looked up. I made an appointment to see a unit next Saturday. 2 bedroom, 2nd floor. Would you want to come with me? The invitation surprised me. To look at apartments, to see what else is out there, what life could look like if we stopped waiting for children who aren't coming back, if we built something new instead. I thought about my house, 42 years in one place. Robert's presence in every room, the bedroom where he died, the kitchen where he'd made terrible omelets every Sunday morning, the garage where his workbench still held tools organized exactly the way he liked them. And Brandon, his baby room I'd converted to a guest room that never had guests. The growth chart marks on the doorframe I couldn't bring myself to paint over. The photo wall in the hallway documenting a relationship that had been dying for years, maybe decades. Yes, I said, I'd like to come. Linda smiled a real smile, the first one all evening. Saturday at 10, I'll drive. All right? We finished our soup. Linda stood to leave, gathered the empty pot, waved off my thanks. At the door, she turned back. Dorothy, you did the right thing. With the bank accounts, the power of attorney, all of it. I don't know. Maybe you're being smart. You're protecting yourself. That's not cruelty. That's survival. She paused. And you're not alone in it. Not anymore. After she left, I stood at the kitchen sink, washing our bowls, watching the soapy water swirl down the drain. The house felt different. Still quiet, but not empty. Not lonely. Linda knew, really knew in the way only someone who'd lived it could know. Not just the facts of betrayal, but the specific weight of it. The way it made you question every memory, every moment of motherhood. The guilt that whispered maybe I deserved this somehow. We weren't bad mothers. What they did after is on them, not us. I repeated it to myself, testing the words, seeing if they could hold weight. They could. Saturday, Blue Ridge Retirement Living. A 2-bedroom apartment I'd never imagined needing because I'd never imagined my son would make my own home feel unsafe. But here we were, and maybe Linda was right. Maybe this wasn't an ending. Maybe it was possibility. Monday morning, Patricia called before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. Her voice was different, sharp. Dorothy, we need to talk. Today. Can you be here in an hour? No preamble, no small talk, just urgency. What happened? Not over the phone, just come, please. I set down my coffee cup, saw my hand was steady. That surprised me. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Patricia's office was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building on Pack Square. I'd been here twice before, once when Robert died once last week. Both times the building had felt solid, reassuring. This morning it felt like walking into a courtroom. She was waiting in the lobby. Didn't make me sit in the waiting room, just gestured toward the elevator. Upstairs. In her office, she closed the door, pulled a folder from her desk, set it in front of me with careful deliberation. Brandon filed a petition Friday afternoon. Emergency guardianship. Buncombe County Superior Court. The words took a moment to land. I stared at the folder without opening it. He's asking for full guardianship, Patricia continued. Medical decisions, financial control, where you live, everything. I opened the folder. The legal language was dense formal, but certain phrases jumped out like they'd been highlighted. Severe cognitive decline, irrational financial decisions indicating diminished capacity, paranoid behavior and inability to manage daily affairs. Petitioner expresses grave concern for respondent's well-being and safety. Respondent, that was me, the person these words were about. He's claiming you're mentally incompetent, Patricia said, that you need a guardian to protect you from yourself. I looked up. Based on what? She turned the page. A statement from Dr. Henderson, your family physician. The statement was 2 paragraphs. Professional, clinical, devastating. Patient Dorothy Brennan, age 74, has been under my care for 6 years. In recent months, her son Brandon has expressed concerns about memory lapses and confusion. Patient missed a scheduled appointment in April without calling, which is out of character. When I spoke with her son, he reported she had made unusual financial decisions, removing him from bank accounts without clear explanation. These behaviors may indicate early cognitive decline, requiring evaluation. April, I said slowly. I had the flu. I called and rescheduled. Did you... I stopped. Had I meant to and forgotten in the fog of fever and exhaustion? It doesn't matter if you did, Patricia said. What matters is there's no record of it, and Dr. Henderson, hearing from a concerned son about his elderly mother, made a note. A perfectly reasonable medical note that Brandon is now using as ammunition. I read it again. The words were careful measured, may indicate, nothing definitive. But in a legal document surrounded by Brandon's claims, it read like a diagnosis. The financial decisions, I said, he's calling me protecting myself, paranoid behavior. Yes, I changed my passwords because he stole $12,000 from me. I know that, the court doesn't, not yet. Patricia leaned forward. Dorothy, this is what we were afraid of. He's building a narrative. Forgetful elderly woman makes irrational financial decisions, cuts off her concerned son, exhibits paranoid behavior. He's painting himself as the responsible family member trying to help, and painting me as someone who can't be trusted to manage her own life. The coffee I'd drunk that morning sat heavy in my stomach. I closed the folder, pushed it away slightly, needed distance from those words. Severe cognitive decline. I was sitting in a lawyer's office having a strategic conversation about protecting my legal rights. I'd learned to use a Ring doorbell and online banking. I'd made soup, balanced my checkbook, driven myself here through morning traffic. What do we do? Patricia pulled out her phone. We prove him wrong. Full medical evaluation, today. Physical health, cognitive function, mental status. We need ironclad documentation that you're of sound mind. Today, he filed for emergency guardianship, which means he's claiming there's immediate danger. If he succeeds, a temporary order could be granted within 2 weeks. We don't have time to wait. 2 weeks, 14 days to lose control of my entire life. I've already called Dr. Sarah Morris. She's a geriatric specialist, does competency evaluations. She can see you at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Where? Her clinic on Merriman Avenue. I'll text you the address. Patricia's voice softened slightly. Dorothy, I know this is a lot, but we knew it was coming. He telegraphed it when he consulted that elder law attorney. We're just moving faster than he expected. Because I cut off his access. Because you protected yourself, and he's retaliating. She tapped the folder. This petition. This is him trying to regain control through legal means since he can't manipulate you anymore. I nodded slowly. The logic was clear, cold, strategic. But underneath it was something that made my chest tight. My son was trying to have me declared incompetent, was asking a court to strip away my autonomy, my personhood, my right to make my own decisions. All because I'd said no. I drove to the clinic in a daze. Merriman Avenue, North Asheville, past familiar landmarks that felt strange today. The grocery store where I shopped every week. The library where I'd gotten books on Saturday. The coffee shop where Linda and I had met last month. Evidence of a functional life. A competent life. Severe cognitive decline. Irrational financial decisions. Paranoid behavior. The words from Brandon's petition ran through my head like a diagnosis I hadn't known I had. This version of me he'd created, forgetful, confused, unable to manage, existed only on paper. But paper apparently was powerful enough to reshape reality. If this was cognitive decline, I wanted to see how he'd define competence. Because from where I sat, competence looked like recognizing theft, like protecting yourself from someone who'd systematically exploited you, like seeking legal counsel and taking action. All the things he was now calling symptoms of incompetence were actually proof of the opposite. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so dangerous. The clinic was small, tucked into a medical building between a dentist and a physical therapy office. I sat in my car for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. This was it. The evaluation that would either prove I was who I knew myself to be or give Brandon the ammunition to take everything. I thought about Robert, what he'd say if he were here. Probably something practical like, just tell them the truth, Dot. You've never had a problem with that. The truth. That I was 74 years old, reasonably healthy, sharp enough to recognize betrayal when it was documented in credit card statements. That I'd made strategic decisions to protect myself from someone who'd proven he didn't have my best interests at heart. That wasn't paranoia, that was pattern recognition. I got out of the car, walked into the clinic, signed in at the front desk. At exactly 3 o'clock, a woman in her 40s, dark hair, pulled back white coat over scrubs, appeared in the waiting room doorway. Mrs. Brennan, I'm Dr. Sarah Morris. Patricia Reynolds explained your situation. She smiled, warm, professional, reassuring. Let's go back. And let's prove what we both know, that you're perfectly capable of running your own life. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and lavender. Dr. Morris pulled up a rolling chair and looked at me directly. Mrs. Brennan, tell me why you're here. Not how are you feeling or what brings you in today. A test question. The evaluation had already begun. My son filed for emergency guardianship. He's claiming I'm mentally incompetent. I'm here to prove I'm not. And are you incompetent number? Good. She opened a folder, clicked a pen. Let's make sure the court knows that. The physical exam came first. Blood pressure, pulse, reflexes. Dr. Morris worked efficiently, narrating as she went. Blood pressure is 118/76. Excellent for any age, remarkable for 74. She wrapped the cuff, made a note. Are you on any medications? Lisinopril 5 milligrams daily for blood pressure, though clearly it's working. Baby aspirin. Vitamin D, 2,000 units. Calcium supplement with vitamin K. I didn't need to check the bottles I'd brought. I knew what I took and why. Any history of stroke, heart attack, seizures. No, gallbladder surgery 4 years ago, routine. Broken wrist in 2019, fell on ice, healed completely. Otherwise healthy. She typed notes. Your medical recall is excellent. Do you manage your own medications? Yes, I use a weekly pill organizer. Fill it every Sunday evening. Who does your grocery shopping? I do. Cooking. Myself. I made soup 3 days ago, chicken noodle from scratch. Lasted me through the weekend. More notes. Transportation. I drive. My car is 12 years old but well maintained. I had the oil change last month at the shop on Patton Avenue. Dr. Morris looked up. Mrs. Brennan, I'm going to be direct. Nothing about this conversation suggests cognitive impairment, but we need documentation, so we're going to do a formal assessment. All right. She pulled out a printed form. This is called the Mini Mental State Examination. It tests memory, attention, language, and spatial awareness. I'm going to ask you some questions and give you some tasks. Ready? Yes. What's today's date? Monday, June 24th, 2024. What city are we in? Asheville, North Carolina. What's the name of this clinic? I glanced at the door. Merriman Family Medicine. She nodded, made check marks. I'm going to say 3 words. I want you to remember them because I'll ask you to repeat them in a few minutes. The words are apple, table, penny. Can you repeat those? Apple, table, penny. Good. Now I'd like you to count backward from 100 by 7s. I'd done harder math balancing my checkbook. 100, 93, 86, 79, 72, 65. Excellent. Can you spell the word world backward for me? DLROW. More check marks. She had me follow commands, touch your nose. Close your eyes, raise your right hand. Draw a clock showing 10 past 11. Copy a simple geometric design. Then, can you remember those 3 words I asked you to remember? Apple table penny. She set the form down, looked at me with something like satisfaction. 30 out of 30. Perfect score. Mrs. Brennan, you're functioning at the cognitive level of someone 30 years younger than you. The relief should have been stronger. Instead, I felt angry that I'd needed to prove this, that there'd been any question at all. Can I see the score? She turned the form toward me. Every box checked. Every answer correct. Mathematical proof of what I'd known all along. This goes in your file, Dr. Morris said, and I'll write a formal report for your attorney. She rolled her chair closer. The clinical distance dropped slightly. Tell me what's really happening. Why did your son file for guardianship? So I told her, not the emotional version, the factual one. The credit card charges, the $85,000, the power of attorney I'd revoked when I discovered the abuse, the will I'd changed. And he's calling your self-protective actions paranoid behavior, Dr. Morris said flatly. Yes, let me be very clear. Her voice was sharp, now professional anger barely contained. What you're doing is exactly what a competent adult should do when they discover financial exploitation. You recognized a pattern of abuse. You consulted an attorney. You took legal action to protect yourself. Those are rational, appropriate responses. She pulled up a document on her computer, started typing. His petition claims you're making irrational financial decisions. The irrational decision would be leaving him access after discovering $12,000 in unauthorized charges. Removing him was logical. Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard. I watched words appear on the screen. Patient demonstrates excellent cognitive function. MMSE. Score 30 out of 30. Memory intact. Judgment appropriate. No evidence of confusion, disorientation, or impaired decision-making capacity. The missed appointment he mentioned in April. Dr. Morris pulled up another screen. I see a note here. You called, rescheduled. You had influenza. I thought I had. You did. There's a record. She turned the screen toward me. April 12th, 2024. Patient called reports flu, symptoms requests reschedule. The small vindication felt enormous. I hadn't been confused. I'd been sick and I'd handled it appropriately. Dr. Morris returned to her report. This, she said, still typing, is a case of elder abuse disguised as filial concern. Your son is using the legal system to regain control over assets he can no longer access through manipulation. She hit print. Pages emerged from the machine, 3 of them dense with medical terminology and clear conclusions. This report states that you show no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or impaired capacity. It notes that your recent financial decisions demonstrate appropriate judgment and self-protective behavior. And it documents that the missed appointment your son referenced was handled appropriately and is not evidence of confusion. She handed me the pages. They were still warm from the printer. Mrs. Brennan, I'm also noting suspected financial exploitation and recommending the court investigate whether your son's petition is itself an act of abuse, an attempt to use guardianship as a tool of control. I looked down at the report. 3 pages describing a competent, functional woman taking appropriate action to protect herself. Brandon's petition had described someone else, a confused elderly woman who couldn't be trusted with her own life. This report described me. At the front desk, Dr. Morris copied the report. 1 for me, 1 for Patricia, 1 for her files. Your attorney will file this with the court. Given this documentation, I don't see how any judge would grant guardianship. She paused. But Dorothy, even with this report, be careful. Your son has already shown he's willing to manipulate medical professionals and legal systems. Document everything, keep records. I am. Good. She walked me to the door. You did well today. Not that there was ever any doubt. Outside, the late afternoon sun was warm. 5:15. I'd been in the clinic for over 2 hours and I felt exhausted but steady. Solid. I unlocked my car, set the report on the passenger seat. 3 pages. Proof I was exactly who I'd always been. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then thought evidence. Everything is evidence now. Hello, Grandma. A young voice shaking. It's Emma, please don't hang up. I pulled over immediately. My hands needed to be still for this. Emma, sweetheart, are you okay? A sob came through the phone. Then her voice young and shaking. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'm so sorry. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm at a pause. A woman's voice in the background, gentle. Then Emma again. I'm at Mrs. Henderson's house. Linda, she said she's your friend. Linda. 2 doors down from me. How had Emma... She let me use her phone. Mine's dead and I couldn't go home. Not after... Her voice broke again. Emma, slow down. Tell me what happened. I need to see you. Can I please come see you? I know you probably don't want to talk to me after everything, but please, I need to tell you something. The desperation in her voice made my chest tight. Of course you can see me. You can always see me. But Emma, what's going on? Another sob, then words tumbling out fast like she'd been holding them too long. I heard them. Tonight. Dad and Mom. They were in the kitchen and I was supposed to be doing homework, but I heard... She stopped. Breathed. Grandma. They said things. About you. About when you're gone. The world narrowed to her voice and the sound of my own heartbeat. What did they say? Dad was on the phone with someone. A lawyer, maybe. And he said... Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. When she's finally gone, we can handle everything. The house, the accounts, all of it. We just need to wait it out. Wait it out. Like I was a problem with an expiration date. Like my death was a solution they were anticipating. Mom said something about the guardianship. That if they get it, they can move things along faster. And Dad laughed. He actually laughed and said, one way or another, it'll be over soon. My vision blurred. I gripped the steering wheel harder. They're waiting for me to die. Yes. Emma's voice cracked. And I realized all those times Dad said you were too busy to see me, or you forgot my birthday, or you didn't care, he was lying. Wasn't he? Yes, sweetheart, he was lying. I knew it. I mean, I didn't know, but something always felt wrong. So after they went to bed, I went looking. And Grandma, I found... She started crying again, harder this time. I found them in the basement, in a box behind Dad's old golf clubs. Found what? The videos. Emma's voice steadied slightly, like she was reading from something in front of her. Emma's first birthday, 2010. That's what the label says. In your handwriting. There are 14 of them, Grandma. 14 DVDs, one for every birthday. The newest one says Emma's 14th birthday, 2024. It's from 2 months ago. 14 videos. I'd started when Emma was born. Every year I'd film a message telling her how much I loved her, sharing memories from that year, giving her advice I hoped she'd need someday. I'd mail them to Brandon's house with cards and small gifts, always hoping they'd watch them together. I'd never known if they did. Brandon never mentioned them. Emma never thanked me. Now I knew why. They've never been opened, Emma whispered. The seals are still intact. You made me 14 birthday videos and they hid every single one. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed around words that wouldn't come. There's more. Emma continued. Cards. Dozens of them. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, thinking of you cards. All from you. All unopened. Some of them still have money inside. I could feel the bills through the envelopes. 14 years of love archived in a basement like evidence that needed hiding. He told me you didn't care, Emma said. Every year on my birthday, I'd ask if Grandma was coming, and he'd say you were busy, or you'd forgotten, or you had other plans. And I believed him. I stopped asking. Oh, Emma, you made me 14 videos. She was crying fully now. 14 years you tried, and they hid it all. They erased you. I sat in my parked car on the side of Merriman Avenue crying in a way I hadn't since Robert died. Not grief crying. Relief crying. I hadn't failed. All those birthdays I'd recorded messages hoping Emma would know I loved her. All those cards I'd sent, wondering why she never called to say thank you. All those years I'd thought maybe I wasn't trying hard enough, wasn't present enough, wasn't the grandmother I should be. I hadn't failed. I'd been erased. Systematically, deliberately, for 14 years. Grandma? Emma's voice was small. Are you mad at me? No, sweetheart, never. I should have known. I should have questioned it. I'm 14, I'm old enough to know better. You believed your father because children are supposed to be able to trust their parents. That's not your fault. But I want to make it right. I want to see you. Can I come over tomorrow? Yes, anytime. Do you will your parents let you? I don't care if they let me. Her voice hardened, and I heard something new, their determination. I'm not asking permission. This isn't about them anymore. Through the phone, I heard Linda's voice again, warm and supportive. Then Emma. Linda says she'll drive me. Tomorrow after school. Is 3 o'clock okay? 3 o'clock is perfect. Grandma. A pause. I'm not choosing sides. I'm choosing what's right. 14 years old, and she had more moral clarity than her father ever had. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time watching the sky darken beyond my windshield. 14 DVDs. 14 years of messages Emma had never seen. 14 birthdays she'd thought I'd forgotten. Brandon hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen time, memory, relationship. He'd taken my granddaughter from me and convinced her it was my choice. That was almost worse than the guardianship petition. Almost worse than the credit cards. Because those were about money and control. This was about love, and he'd weaponized it. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. She's staying here tonight. Safe. We'll see you tomorrow at 3. You've raised a brave girl, even if you didn't get to do it yourself. I drove home slowly, carefully. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear. From something else, a strange mixture of rage and hope and grief for all the years we'd lost. But tomorrow Emma was coming, and she was bringing 14 years of unopened love with her. Not lost then, just delayed. I could work with that. I'd baked cookies that morning, chocolate chip from Robert's mother's recipe. The house needed to smell like welcome. At 3:20, Linda's car pulled into the driveway. Emma got out, slowly clutching a folder. She looked young and nervous standing on the walkway. I opened the door before she could knock. Hi, Grandma. Hi, sweetheart. Linda waved from the car. 5:30. Perfect, thank you. Emma stepped inside. Grandmother and granddaughter trying to find our way back across years of enforced distance. In the kitchen, I poured lemonade while Emma set her folder on the table. I made you something. Last night after we talked. She pulled out a print. Digital art, careful and detailed. A woman at a chessboard, silver hair, pulled back, face calm. In front of her, only 2 pieces, a queen and a bishop. Across the board, a full opposing army, perfectly positioned, but somehow already defeated. The woman's hand hovered over her queen, about to make the winning move. This is you, Grandma. I stared. The face wasn't exactly mine, but the expression was determination and strategy. You drew this digital art class. Her voice was tentative. I wanted you to know I see you, what you're doing, how strong you are. Emma, this is beautiful. You're winning. Even though it looks like you're losing, you're actually winning. I touched the protective sleeve. Can I frame it? I hoped you would. We sat with cookies between us, and I decided to be completely honest. Emma, your father filed papers trying to have me declared mentally incompetent. He wants guardianship control over my medical care finances where I live. Everything. She nodded. That's what I heard him talking about. I've been protecting myself. I removed him from my bank accounts, revoked his power of attorney, changed my will. I paused, because I discovered he'd been stealing from me. The credit cards. You know about that. I heard him and Mom fighting. His card got declined. He said it was your fault that you'd lost it. Emma looked at me directly, but there was a reason. $12,000. Charges on an emergency card I gave him for you and Jake. Electronics restaurants, resort stays. Nothing for you, nothing for your brother. She absorbed this quietly. The house money, too. $85,000, a gift for your down payment. And he's saying you're crazy for protecting what's left. Yes. Emma broke a cookie in half without eating it. I don't understand how he became this person. How's Jake? I asked gently. Her face shifted. I don't see him much. Dad keeps him busy sports tutoring. When Jake asks about you, Dad says you're too busy to be involved. I want to be involved. Always have been. I know that now. She looked at her painting. I told Jake about the videos. He wanted to come today, but Dad has him at baseball camp until Friday. Will you tell him he's welcome here anytime? I will, but Grandma Dad controls everything. Our phone schedules, who we see. He watches us. I know, we'll figure it out. Are you going to be okay? Her voice went smaller, younger. With the guardianship, can he really take everything? No, I had a full medical evaluation yesterday. Cognitive tests, everything. Passed perfectly. The doctor wrote a report saying I'm completely competent and that your father's petition is elder abuse. Elder abuse. She tested the words. Good. I'm glad there's a name for it. Me too. I'm glad you're fighting back. So am I. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting patterns across the table, where I'd fed Brandon breakfast, where Robert and I had planned our lives, where I'd sat alone after he died. And now Emma, a new chapter. She stood suddenly. Can I hug you? Always. She wrapped her arms around me, and I held her, this girl I'd loved from a distance for too long. The hug I'd been waiting years for. She smelled like teenage shampoo and something sweet. Her shoulders shook slightly. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you too. We talked for another hour. Her art class. Books she was reading. I told her about the retirement community Linda and I were visiting on Saturday. You're moving. Maybe. Downsizing, starting fresh. I squeezed her hand. But wherever I am, you'll always be welcome. We'll figure out how to stay connected. I'll find a way to call you. I'll be here. At 5:20, Linda's car returned. Emma gathered her things, gave me one more hug. Thank you for being honest with me, for not pretending everything's fine. You're 14, not 4. You deserve the truth. I'll call somehow. I watched her walk to the car, watched them drive away. The house felt less empty, more possible. My phone buzzed. A text from Brandon. Hey, Mom. Emma's been coming home late from school lately. Do you know anything about where she's been? Just want to make sure she's safe. I stared at the careful casualness, the implied trust. Do you know anything when he had no idea I knew everything? He was sensing the loss of control, not just over me, over Emma, over the narrative he'd spent years constructing. I set the phone down without responding. Let him wonder. For 14 years, he'd kept Emma from me. For 14 years, I'd been the one wondering, worrying, asking questions no one answered. Now he could know how that felt. Wednesday morning, I spread 6 years of bank statements across the dining table. My retirement account, the one Robert and I had built together quarter by quarter, paycheck by paycheck for 40 years. I opened my laptop, the 12-year-old Dell that still worked perfectly fine, and created a new Excel spreadsheet. Column A date, column B amount, column C description, column D notes. If Brandon wanted to call me incompetent, I'd show them what competent looked like. I started with 2019, the year I'd given him $85,000. June 15th, the gift transfer. I marked it in green, legal, documented, irreversible. It still hurt to see, but it wasn't theft. I'd chosen that. What came after I hadn't chosen. December 12th, 2019. Transfer to checking $10,000. Memo line emergency B. I pulled up my phone, searched stock market December 2019. Article after article about record highs bubble warnings, retail investors pouring money into tech stocks. I wrote in the notes column market peak, possible trading. February 18th, 2020. Transfer $12,000. Memo line emergency medical B. I stared at the date, opened my personal calendar, scrolled back. There it was, in my careful handwriting, hospital BP crisis. Admitted February 17th, released February 21st. I'd called Brandon from the hospital that morning. My blood pressure had spiked to 180 over 110, dangerously high. The doctor wanted to keep me for observation run tests. I'd been scared alone wanting my son. Can't make it today, Mom. Work crisis. I'll try to come tomorrow. He hadn't come tomorrow, hadn't come at all. He'd texted on the 20th. Glad you're feeling better. Things are crazy here. While I'd been in a hospital bed hooked to monitors, he'd transferred $12,000 from my retirement account. Not for a medical emergency, for his own purposes. I searched stock market February 2020. COVID-19 crash beginning. Market in free fall. Everyone panic selling. My hands were shaking. I made myself write market crash. Day I was hospitalized. April 7th, 2020. Transfer $8,000. Memo line home repair, B. April 2020. Lockdown, market bottom, the worst of the crash. I searched my emails from that month. Nothing about home repairs, no requests for money, just a brief message. Hope you're staying safe. Don't go out if you don't have to. 3 transfers, $30,000, all during market volatility, 1 at the peak, 2 during the crash. Brandon had gambled with my retirement money. Probably bought high, tried to catch the falling knife, lost everything. And I'd never known. I created a second sheet, titled it Timeline. Cross-referenced everything. June 2019, Dorothy gives Brandon $85,000 house gift. December 2019, Brandon takes $10,000 unauthorized. Market at peak. February 2020. Brandon takes $12,000 unauthorized. Dorothy hospitalized. Market crashing. April 2020. Brandon takes $8,000 unauthorized. Market bottom. Total unauthorized withdrawals $30,000. I pulled up the statements from 2020 forward. No more large withdrawals. He'd either learned his lesson or run out of excuses. Or maybe, and this felt more likely, he'd lost so much that he'd stopped trying. But the damage was done. $30,000 gone. Added to the $12,000 in credit card charges. The $28,000 in loans I documented last week. $70,000. That's what he'd taken through various means over 5 years. No wonder he needed guardianship. No wonder he was desperate. I thought about his petition to the court, the words he'd used: irrational financial decisions, inability to manage affairs. He'd accused me of exactly what he'd been doing. The projection was almost funny. Almost. I opened a new document, typed out what I knew. Brandon Brennan withdrew $30,000 from my retirement account without authorization between December 2019 and April 2020. Timing correlates with stock market volatility. Evidence suggests unauthorized trading/gambling with my funds. Losses likely motivated current financial desperation and guardianship petition. I attached the spreadsheet, saved it all to a folder Evidence Brandon Theft. Then I picked up my phone and texted Patricia. Found more. $30,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, 2019 to 2020. Looks like stock trading losses. Can you call me? Her reply came in less than 2 minutes. Jesus, come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Bring everything. I sat at the dining table for a long time after that, looking at the spreadsheet on my screen. Numbers in neat columns, dates and amounts. Evidence of 5 years of systematic theft dressed up as family loans and emergencies. This was why he needed me to be incompetent. Not just to control my money going forward, but to explain away what he'd already taken. If I was confused, forgetful, unable to manage my affairs, then of course there were unexplained withdrawals. Of course I'd given him money and forgotten. Of course the records didn't make sense. My incompetence would be his alibi. But I wasn't incompetent. I was sitting here with 6 years of bank statements, a working knowledge of Excel, and a clear memory of every time he'd lied to me. The day I was hospitalized with dangerously high blood pressure, he withdrew $12,000 to gamble on a crashing stock market instead of coming to see me. That wasn't a confused old woman making things up. That was documented fact. I saved the spreadsheet, printed 2 copies, one for Patricia, one for my files. Put the originals in the folder I'd labeled Legal Patricia. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Got home safe. Thank you for yesterday. I love you. I typed back, I love you too, sweetheart. Call anytime. Such a simple exchange. Such an ordinary thing, a grandmother and granddaughter saying they loved each other. But we'd lost 14 years of ordinary things because Brandon had made sure we couldn't have them. He'd stolen money, yes. $70,000. But he'd also stolen time, relationship, trust, every birthday video Emma had never seen, every card she'd never opened, every moment we could have shared. You couldn't put that in a spreadsheet, couldn't calculate that loss in dollars and cents. But maybe you could calculate it in years. 14 years of a granddaughter's childhood, 14 years of being erased. I looked at the numbers on my screen one more time. $30,000 gone. But I'd found it, documented it, turned theft into evidence. Tomorrow, Patricia would tell me what it meant legally. Tonight, I knew what it meant to me. He'd gambled with my retirement and lost. Now I'd gamble with his freedom. And I wouldn't lose. Patricia's office felt different Thursday morning. Not sanctuary that implied safety from temporary danger. This felt more permanent, like a war room where we were building something that would last. The spreadsheet sat between us on her desk. 3 withdrawals, $30,000, dates that told their own story. This is systematic theft, Patricia said. Not confused transactions, not misunderstandings. Theft with a pattern. Can we prove it? The timing is damning. Market volatility, your hospitalization. These aren't coincidences. She tapped the February 2020 date. You were in the hospital and he was transferring money. That's not a son helping his mother. That's opportunity. What do we do with it? We could file a criminal complaint. But Dorothy, I want to show you something else first. Something that protects you going forward. She pulled up her computer. I want to talk about an irrevocable trust. At 11:30, Richard Foster's face appeared on Patricia's laptop screen. Late 50s, silver hair, reading glasses perched on his nose. He had the calm competence of someone who'd spent 30 years helping people protect what mattered. Mrs. Brennan Patricia's filled me in on your situation. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Thank you. Let's talk about your house. You own it outright, correct? No mortgage. Paid off in 2006. And it's titled solely in your name. Yes, since my husband passed. He nodded, made notes. Current market value in West Asheville for a 3-bedroom single family, I'd estimate $400,000 to $450,000. Does that sound right? It did. The neighborhood had changed dramatically since Robert and I bought the house in 1982 for $63,000. Young families, now renovation projects, coffee shops where there used to be hardware stores. Patricia suggests creating an irrevocable trust with the house as the primary asset. Do you understand what irrevocable means? I can't change my mind. Exactly. Once the house goes into this trust, you can't take it back out. You can't modify the beneficiaries. It's locked. He paused. That's actually the strength of it. Your son can't claim you changed things in a moment of confusion because you literally cannot change them. Who would the beneficiaries be? That's up to you. Patricia mentioned your granddaughter, Emma. And my grandson, Jake, equally. All right, we'd structure it as an education trust for both of them, managed by a trustee, Patricia, if she's willing, with distributions for college trade school, whatever educational path they choose. They'd get full access at age 25. And the rest, Richard glanced at Patricia. The rest. The other half, I said, I want to split it. 50% for Emma and Jake's education, 50% to the women's shelter on Patton Avenue. Richard's expression shifted surprise, then something warmer. That's generous. It's necessary. I thought of Linda, of all the women who'd been financially abused by people who were supposed to love them. I'm not the only one this happens to. I just happen to have resources to help. He nodded slowly. You're not just cutting off a predator, Mrs. Brennan. You're protecting vulnerable people. That's the idea. Richard explained the mechanics. The house would be appraised sold when I was ready. No rush, no pressure. Sale proceeds would go into the trust. The trustee would invest, conservatively distribute, according to terms I'd set. What about your son? Richard asked carefully. Nothing. He gets nothing. Are you certain? Completely. Patricia leaned forward. Richard, show her the will changes too. He pulled up another document. My current will, the one I drafted after Robert died, stared back at me in cold legal language. Brandon's name everywhere, executor, primary beneficiary, guardian of my affairs, should I become incapacitated. We remove him entirely, Richard said. Patricia becomes executor. The trust becomes the primary beneficiary, which means Emma, Jake, and the women's shelter. Brandon's name doesn't appear anywhere. Do it. Mrs. Brennan, I have to ask, is there any chance you might reconcile with your son? Any scenario where you'd want to... No. The word came out harder than I'd intended. Richard and Patricia exchanged glances. I've reconciled with reality, I said more quietly. My son stole from me. He's trying to have me declared incompetent to cover his theft and gain access to what's left. He hid my granddaughter from me for 14 years. He waited for me to die like it was a business problem with an expiration date. I met Richard's eyes. The Brandon I loved doesn't exist. Maybe he never did. I'm protecting Emma and Jake from him, and I'm protecting myself. Richard nodded. All right then, let's make sure he can't touch any of it. The documents printed out in Patricia's office, thick stacks of paper dense with legal language. Richard walked us through each signature line via video call. Irrevocable trust agreement. Initial here, sign here. Updated last will and testament. Initial here, sign here. Trustee designation. Initial here, sign here. My hand was steady. Each signature felt like closing a door that had been open too long, letting in cold air and dangerous people. This is effective immediately, Richard said. Your will is updated. The trust is established. When you sell the house, the proceeds go directly into trust. Brandon has no legal claim to any of it. What if he contests it? He can try, but you've been evaluated as fully competent. You're acting with legal counsel. The trust serves a clear purpose: education for your grandchildren, charitable giving. There's no basis for contest. Richard smiled slightly. You've built a fortress, Mrs. Brennan. He's locked outside. Patricia printed extra copies. One set for me, one for her files, one she'd send to my bank. I'll file these with the court tomorrow, she said. Once they're filed, they're public record. He'll find out. Good, let him. I drove home slowly, the documents in a folder on my passenger seat. The fortress Richard had called it. A structure built of paper and signatures and legal precedent, but solid nonetheless. For 42 years, this house had been mine and Robert's. Our home, our investment, our legacy. We'd imagined it going to Brandon then, to his children. A family home passing down through generations. But Brandon had forfeited that. Not through one mistake, but through years of calculated exploitation. He'd turned love into opportunity, family into access, care, into theft. The house would still help Emma and Jake, and it would help women I'd never meet, women trying to escape the same patterns of financial abuse I discovered too late. Not the legacy Robert and I had imagined, but maybe a better one. I pulled into my driveway at 2:15. The afternoon sun made the house look golden beautiful. 42 years of memories in those walls. But walls could protect new memories, too. I was halfway up the walk when my phone buzzed. Ring doorbell notification motion detected at front door. I opened the app. Brandon's face filled the screen, distorted by the wide-angle lens. Angry. His jaw was tight, his eyes hard. He knocked. Hard, aggressive knocks that rattled the door frame. I stood on my own walkway 30 feet from my door, watching him through my phone. He knocked again, pulled out his phone. A second later, mine rang, Brandon's name on the screen. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. I could imagine what it said: demands, accusations, threats, thinly veiled as concern. He knew something had changed. I could see it in his posture, his aggression. He tried Emma's phone, probably. Tried his bank access, his credit card. Found doors closing everywhere he turned. But he didn't know the half of it yet. Didn't know about the trust, the will, the documents filed with the court that morning. Didn't know he'd just become financially irrelevant to my life. I watched him through the app as he finally turned, stormed back to his car, slammed the door hard enough to rock the vehicle. Then I walked around to my back door, let myself in through the kitchen, locked it behind me. My fortress, my terms, my timeline. Not his anymore. Before I reveal what happened when he came back to my house, when I finally faced him with everything I'd found, drop a comment below with just the number 74. Let me know you're still here with me. And a quick note, what comes next includes some creative storytelling elements. If you'd rather not continue, you can stop here. But if you stay, I promise the lesson is worth hearing. Friday evening, the Ring doorbell alerted 3 times in rapid succession. Brandon was back, and this time he wasn't planning to leave. I watched him through the app, pacing on my porch, checking his phone, looking around like he was deciding whether to force his way in. Then he knocked again, hard and insistent. I walked to the door and opened it. His face registered surprise. He'd expected to be locked out, to have to yell through wood and glass. But I'd decided something over the past 2 days I wasn't hiding. Not in my own home, not from him. "We need to talk," he said. "Come in." He walked into my living room like he owned it. Vanessa followed, uncertain, her eyes darting between us. I hadn't expected her. That changed things. "Kitchen," I said. "We'll sit at the table." A power move. The kitchen where I'd fed him breakfast for 18 years, where I'd helped with homework and listened to problems and packed school lunches, where I'd been a mother. Not anymore. We sat, I folded my hands on the table, waiting. Brandon pulled out his phone, slammed it down. My card was declined today, at the grocery store. Then I tried to log into the bank account and I'm locked out. What the hell did you do? I protected my assets. Your assets? I'm your son. I'm supposed to help you manage. You stole from me. The words landed flat and factual. No emotion, just truth. Vanessa's head turned sharply toward him. What? I removed you as an authorized user. I continued looking only at Brandon. On the credit card you'd charged $12,247 to. Electronics, restaurants, resort stays. The card I gave you for Emma and Jake's emergencies. You spent $12,000 on yourself, $280 on your children. That's not. You're confused, Mom. You don't remember. I have the statements. Every charge dated and categorized. Charleston Resort Mother's Day weekend while I'd fallen in the garden and needed help getting to urgent care. Mountain Ridge Golf Club membership. The Ivy restaurant multiple times. I pulled a folder from the chair beside me, slid it across the table. I made you a spreadsheet. Would you like to see it? He stared at the folder without touching it. There's more, I said. $30,000 withdrawn from my retirement account between December 2019 and April 2020. Stock market gambling, I assume. December at the peak. February during the crash. April at the bottom. You lost it all, didn't you? Vanessa made a small sound. 30,000? I can show you those statements too. Vanessa, she doesn't know what she's... I know exactly what I'm talking about. I kept my voice level. February 18th, 2020. You transferred $12,000 while I was in the hospital with dangerously high blood pressure. I called you from my hospital bed, scared and alone. You said you'd try to come the next day. You never came. You were too busy gambling with my retirement money. Vanessa turned to Brandon, her face white. You told me we were broke, that we had to be careful. I worked double shifts at the pharmacy because you said we were behind on bills. That's not... $30,000, she repeated, her voice rising. While I worked double shifts, while I told Emma we couldn't afford her art program, while you said we couldn't help my mother with her medical bills. Vanessa, listen. No. She stood up, chair scraping loud against the floor. I'm done listening. She walked out. We heard the front door open, then close. Brandon half rose, then sat back down, his jaw tight. You're turning everyone against me. I'm telling the truth. There's a difference. He leaned forward, tried a different tactic, voice softer now, wounded. Mom, I know things have been complicated, but we're family. We can work through this. Family. I let the word sit there. Is that what we are? Because last Sunday, standing in my kitchen while I made you tea, you told Vanessa I was dead weight, that you needed to know when you could cut me loose, that the guardianship paperwork would let you handle everything once I was gone. His face went blank, complete stillness. I heard you, I said. Every word. She's dead weight now. When are we cutting her loose? That's what you said about your mother, while I was 30 feet away making you tea. I didn't mean that was taken out of context. What context makes that acceptable? He had no answer. You filed for emergency guardianship, claimed I was mentally incompetent, made irrational financial decisions, exhibited paranoid behavior. You used my protection of my own assets as evidence of dementia. I pulled out another document. This is my medical evaluation. Cognitive score 30 out of 30. Perfect. The doctor's report states I'm fully competent and that your petition appears to be elder abuse. I slid it across the table. He didn't look at it. The irrational financial decisions were me discovering your theft and protecting what's left. The paranoid behavior was me consulting an attorney after finding evidence of systematic exploitation, a competent adult protecting herself from a thief. Brandon's expression changed. Calculation replaced shock. Emma's been coming home late. She's been different, cold. You've been talking to her, haven't you? Turning my daughter against me? I've been honest with her. She's 14. She doesn't understand. She understands that you hid 14 years of birthday videos from her. DVDs. I made one every year since she was born. Messages telling her I loved her, sharing memories, giving her advice. You kept them in a box in your basement, unopened. She thought I'd forgotten her, that I didn't care. His hands clenched on the table. She found them last week, called me crying, asked why you'd lied to her about me for her entire childhood. You had no right to tell her. The truth, I had every right. She deserved to know her grandmother loved her, that I tried, that you erased me deliberately. Brandon stood suddenly, chair falling backward. You're destroying this family. No, I'm protecting myself and my grandchildren from you. You'll die alone. His voice was sharp, now vicious. No one will visit you. No one will care. And you'll have done it to yourself. I stood too, matched his height, even though he was taller, looked him in the eye. Emma knows everything now. She visits me. We talk. Jake will too when he's old enough to understand. I have friends, real friends, not people waiting for me to die so they can take what's mine. You can't cut me out. I'm your son. I have rights. You have no rights to my assets anymore. My house is going into an irrevocable trust. When it sells, 50% goes to Emma and Jake's education fund, 50% to the women's shelter. You get nothing, not $1 ever. His face flushed dark red. That's my inheritance. Dad and I built that house. Dad built that house. You hid birthday cards in your basement and waited for me to die. I'll contest the trust. I'll prove you're not competent. With what evidence? A perfect cognitive evaluation bank record showing I managed my finances competently until you started stealing a medical doctor's report stating your guardianship petition is abusive. I stepped closer. You have nothing, Brandon. No case, no leverage, no inheritance. You'll never see Emma or Jake again. Emma came to my house Tuesday, had cookies in this kitchen, told me she loved me. She's 14, not 4. Old enough to make her own choices. I paused. And Jake will be old enough soon, too. The fight went out of him all at once. His shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like the boy I'd raised, lost, confused, searching for a way out. But I couldn't feel sorry for him. Not anymore. You need to leave. Mom, you're not my son anymore. The words came out calm, final. You're a stranger who happens to share my last name. Someone who stole from me, lied to me, hid my grandchildren from me, and tried to have me declared incompetent to cover his theft. That's not a son. That's a criminal. I never meant, yes, you did. Every withdrawal was a choice. Every lie was deliberate. Every birthday video you hid was cruelty. I walked to the front door, opened it. Get out of my house. He stood there for a long moment, then walked past me without another word. I closed the door, locked it, leaned against it until I heard his car start, heard him drive away. My phone buzzed, a text from Brandon. You're destroying our family. I hope you can live with that. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I didn't destroy this family. I stopped pretending it existed. I hit send, then blocked his number. The house was quiet. Just me and 42 years of memories, most of them good, some of them lies I'd believed because I'd wanted to. I walked to the kitchen, put on the kettle, and sat at the table where I'd just disowned my son. No tears, no second guessing, just a strange, settled peace. The confrontation I'd been avoiding for years, maybe decades, was over, and I'd survived it. More than survived, I'd won. Saturday morning, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. Brandon, using someone else's phone or maybe a new number. I took a screenshot, saved it to the evidence folder, and set the phone down without responding. 20 minutes later, another number. Mom, please, we need to talk. I can explain everything. Screenshot, save, silence. By noon, a third number. This is all your fault. Vanessa took the kids. They won't even talk to me. I stared at that one longer. Vanessa took the kids. Good. Screenshot, save, block the number. Around 2 o'clock, a different message came through. Known contact this time, Vanessa. Dorothy. This is Vanessa. I know we haven't really talked, and I know I should have spoken up before. I'm sorry, I didn't know about the $30,000. I thought we were struggling. He told me we were behind on everything. I sat at the kitchen table reading carefully. I'm taking Emma and Jake. I can't stay with him after what I heard Friday. The lies, the gambling, what he said about you. I'm not asking for money or anything. I just wanted you to know. And to say I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Then, would it be okay if we stayed with you for a few days just until I figure things out? I understand if you say no. I typed back immediately. Yes, the spare room is ready. Come when you need to. Her reply came fast. Thank you. Monday afternoon. Linda said she'd help us. Linda, of course. Sunday afternoon, Linda called. He came to my house this morning, pounding on the door demanding to know if I was hiding his family. Told him I didn't know what he was talking about and to get off my property before I called the police. Did he leave? Eventually, stood in my driveway yelling for a few minutes. Mrs. Peterson across the street came out with her phone. That got him moving. Linda paused. Dorothy, I don't think he's stable right now. Be careful. I am. Good, I'm picking up Vanessa and the kids tomorrow at 1. We'll be at your place by 1:30. After we hung up, I walked upstairs to the spare bedroom, the one that had been Brandon's childhood room, then a guest room that never had guests. I changed the sheets, put fresh towels in the bathroom, cleared space in the closet, made room for the family he'd driven away. More messages came through Sunday night and Monday morning, different numbers each time. You turned Vanessa against me. The kids won't answer their phones. You're a vindictive old woman, and you'll die alone. Please, Mom, I'm sorry, just talk to me. This is your fault. I screenshot each one. Watched the evidence folder grow. Watched my son unravel in real time through text messages, cycling through anger and blame and desperate pleading. Patricia had said to document everything. This was everything proof that he was escalating, that his control was slipping, that whatever stability he'd maintained was crumbling. I should have felt something. Sadness, maybe, or triumph. Instead, I just felt tired. Monday at 1 o'clock, I was cleaning the kitchen when my phone rang. Emma. Grandma, we're leaving now. Mom wanted me to tell you. I'll be here. Is it really okay, all three of us? Emma, sweetheart, it's more than okay. Dad doesn't know yet that we're leaving. Mom told him she was taking us to the dentist. A pause. He's going to be really mad. Let him be mad. You'll be safe here. Okay. Her voice was small. See you soon. At 1:15, I stood at the front window watching the street. The spare room was ready. I'd made a grocery run that morning, things teenagers would eat easy meals for someone stressed and tired like Vanessa must be. I wasn't doing this for Vanessa. She'd stood silent while Brandon manipulated and stole, had benefited from money he'd taken from me, had let him hide those birthday videos in their basement. But she hadn't known about the $30,000, hadn't known he'd gambled away our retirement funds while she worked double shifts, and now she was choosing to protect her children. That took courage. Maybe not as much courage as she should have shown earlier, but courage nonetheless. At 1:30 exactly, Linda's car pulled into my driveway. I watched through the window as the passenger door opened. Vanessa stepped out, looked up at my house with an expression I recognized, fear mixed with desperate hope. The look of someone who'd run out of options and was praying this one would work. The back door opened. Emma emerged, then reached back to help someone else. Jake, 12 years old. Brandon's face, but smaller, younger, uncertain. He carried a backpack covered in baseball team patches, looked around like he wasn't sure where he was or why. Linda popped the trunk. 2 suitcases. Not many, but enough for a few days. Enough for an escape. Emma said something to Jake. He nodded, shoulders straightening slightly. They walked toward my front door together. I opened it before they could knock. Vanessa stood on my porch, eyes red-rimmed makeup faded. Dorothy, Come in, I said, all of you. Emma hugged me immediately, fierce and tight. Over her shoulder, I watched Jake hover in the doorway, uncertain. Hi, Grandma, he said quietly. Hi, Jake, I'm glad you're here. Linda brought the suitcases in, set them in the hallway. I'll leave you all to get settled. Dorothy, call me if you need anything. Thank you, Linda. After she left, we stood in my living room, me, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren. An odd family unit assembled from the wreckage of the one that had imploded Friday night. The spare room is upstairs, I said. Emma, you can show your mother and Jake. I'll make us lunch. They headed upstairs with their suitcases. I heard footsteps overhead, quiet voices, a door closing. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Where is my family? What did you do? I took a screenshot, added it to the folder, blocked the number. Then I went to the kitchen and started making sandwiches for 4. They'd left him, and they'd come here, to my house, my protection. My chosen family assembled not by blood, but by survival. Brandon had spent years trying to take everything from me. Now I had what he'd lost. Not his money, I'd never wanted that. His family. The people he'd manipulated and controlled and lied to. They were upstairs in my spare room unpacking suitcases, starting over. And he was alone. I hadn't seen them in 2 years. Gloria, Evelyn, and Ruth. My old bridge partners. My coffee shop conspirators. When I'd stopped answering their calls, I'd told myself I was busy. The truth was simpler, I'd been ashamed. But Linda had called them, and now here I was at Carrier Park on a warm Tuesday afternoon, carrying iced tea and a heart that felt both heavy and light. They were already at our old picnic table under the oak tree. Gloria waved. Evelyn pulled me into a hug. Ruth looked at me with sharp eyes and said, "Took you long enough." Emma came with me, she'd insisted, and settled on the grass nearby with her sketchbook, giving us space but staying close. "I'm sorry," I began, but Gloria cut me off. "Don't. We're here because Linda said you've been through hell. We want to hear it from you." So I told them. The eavesdropping, the credit card theft, the $30,000 Brandon gambled while I was in the hospital, the guardianship petition claiming I was incompetent, the doctor's report that proved otherwise, the trust I'd set up, the confrontation, Vanessa and the kids walking out with 2 suitcases. When I finished, Gloria laughed, not cruelly, the kind of laugh that comes when you recognize your own story. "Dorothy," she said, "do you know what my brother did after our mother died?" I shook my head. "He told me she'd left the house to both of us, equal shares. I believed him." She sipped her lemonade. 6 months later, I found out he'd forged a quitclaim deed. Transferred my half to himself 3 weeks after the funeral, sold the house for $174,000. I got nothing. "Gloria, I didn't fight. I stopped speaking to him. He sends Christmas cards every year. I throw them away." She looked at me steadily. "He stole my inheritance, but he didn't steal my dignity." Evelyn leaned forward, her hands wrapped around her coffee. "My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 5 years, she said quietly. I turned surprised. Evelyn had always talked about her daughter with pride. She asked me for $40,000, said her boyfriend was starting a business, said if I really loved her, I'd help. Her voice was steady. I said no. I'd already given her $12,000 the year before, paid off 2 credit cards. I told her I couldn't keep funding her chaos. And she stopped calling. She told me I was selfish, that when I died alone in a nursing home, I'd have no one to blame but myself. Evelyn's smile was small and fierce. I moved in with my cousin. I volunteer at the library. I take painting classes, and I sleep just fine. Ruth had been quiet, but now she spoke. My niece tried to sue me last year. "Sue you?" I asked. She claimed my mother had promised her the house, a verbal agreement, said I was keeping what was rightfully hers. Ruth's jaw tightened. There was no agreement. My mother's will was witnessed, notarized, and filed, but my niece hired a lawyer anyway. What happened? I fought. Cost me $8,000, but I won. The judge threw it out in 20 minutes. Ruth looked at each of us. She hasn't spoken to me since, and I'm fine with that. She leaned forward. "We're not dying. We're living on our terms." The words settled over the table like a benediction. I thought about Brandon's voice, she's dead weight now, and the way he'd looked at me as if I were an obstacle instead of a person. The 14 DVDs hidden in his basement, the years of love erased. "He told me I'd die alone," I said quietly. The table went still. Then Emma's voice came from behind me, small and uncertain. "Well, you, Grandma." She'd taken out her earbuds. She was watching me with those serious eyes. I looked at Gloria, Evelyn, and Ruth. At the women who'd shown up after 2 years because someone told them I needed them. At Linda, who'd opened her door. At Patricia, who'd built a legal fortress. At Emma, who'd chosen the right side. "No," I said, and my voice didn't shake. "I don't think I will." Emma smiled, small, tentative, relieved. Ruth raised her cup. "To the women who stopped apologizing. We clinked our mismatched cups together. Gloria stretched her arms. So what's next? You staying in that house? I hesitated. I'm thinking about selling it. Evelyn's eyebrows went up. Selling, there's a place Linda told me about. Blue Ridge Retirement Living. Independent units. I looked at my hands. The house is too big. And the trust I set up, half the proceeds go to Emma and Jake's education. The other half goes to a women's shelter. I met Gloria's eyes. Brandon gets nothing. Ruth grinned. Good, let's help you pack. The afternoon stretched long and golden. We didn't solve anything, but we sat together, 4 women who'd been told we were burdens, and we made plans. Emma sketched us. Later, she'd show me the drawing 4 figures at a table surrounded by light. When we stood to leave, Ruth gripped my shoulder. You're not broken, Dorothy. You're just done pretending. I drove home with Emma, windows down, summer air warm. My phone buzzed twice unknown numbers, but I didn't answer. At home, Vanessa was making spaghetti. Jake was setting the table. The house smelled like garlic and safety. Emma sat at the counter. Grandma, do you think we'll be okay? I thought about Gloria's stolen inheritance, Evelyn's 5 years of silence, Ruth's legal fight, Brandon's gambled $30,000, the 14 hidden DVDs, the petition that had failed. I thought about the trust protecting Emma and Jake, the report proving my competence, the friends who'd shown up. Yeah, I said, I think we will. That night, I didn't check my phone or worry about the doorbell. I sat at the kitchen table with my daughter-in-law and grandchildren ate spaghetti, laughed at Jake's terrible joke, and felt something I'd almost forgotten: peace. Outside, the sun set over West Asheville, painting the sky orange and pink. Somewhere across town, Brandon was alone, staring at accounts he couldn't touch. And here, surrounded by people who'd chosen to stay, I realized Ruth had been right. We weren't dying. We were just getting started. Saturday morning, July 6th, 2024. The moving truck arrived at 8. I'd been awake since 5. I stood in the living room, my living room for 42 years, and looked at the boxes stacked against the walls, the furniture shrouded in sheets, the empty spaces where Robert's bookshelves had stood. The house felt lighter already, as if it had been holding its breath. Emma came down the stairs carrying a small box. Grandma, I found this in the hallway closet. Do you want it? It was the teapot, the same one I'd used the day Brandon and Vanessa had visited, the day I'd overheard dead weight and realized my son saw me as an obstacle. I'd washed it since then, but I still remembered the weight of it in my hands, the steam rising while I'd poured Earl Grey and pretended everything was fine. We're taking that right? Emma asked. I took it from her, turned it over. Just a teapot, cream-colored ceramic chipped at the spout, nothing special. But it had survived. Absolutely, I said. She wrapped it carefully in newspaper and carried it to the kitchen counter. Vanessa was in the spare room folding clothes. Jake was boxing baseball cards. Linda had arrived an hour ago with coffee and muffins, now labeling boxes in the hallway. Ruth had texted she'd meet us at Blue Ridge this afternoon. I walked through the house one last time. The living room where Robert and I had slow danced on our 20th anniversary. Where I'd rocked Brandon to sleep as an infant. Where I'd sat alone after the funeral in 2008, surrounded by casseroles, wondering how I'd survive the silence. The kitchen, where I'd made 10,000 breakfasts, taught Emma to roll pie dough, opened bank statements and discovered the truth. Where I'd sat with Patricia and built a fortress out of paperwork. The hallway lined with bright rectangles where photos had hung Brandon at 8/16/23. I'd packed them in a box labeled Memory, handle with care, but I hadn't cried. Robert's office, where I'd found the folder and learned about $85,000 I'd given as a gift, believing it was love. Empty now, except for dust and sunlight. The bedroom, where Robert had died in his sleep. Where I'd lain awake counting ceiling cracks after Brandon's visit. Where I'd made the decision to stop pretending. I touched the doorframe. Thank you, I said out loud. The house had held me when I was breaking, but I didn't need it to protect me anymore. On the kitchen counter, I placed a folded piece of paper handwritten on good stationery. To the new owners, this house was bought with love in 1982. It survived grief in 2008. It taught me about strength in 2024. The floors creak in the hallway. The kitchen window sticks in summer. The oak tree in the backyard is older than both of us. Treat it well. Dorothy Brennan. Emma read it over my shoulder. That's perfect, Grandma. The movers carried the last box and loaded it into the truck. Vanessa locked the front door and handed me the key. I held it for a moment, then slipped it into my purse. I'd leave it with the realtor Monday. Linda drove me and Emma. Vanessa and Jake followed. The moving truck rumbled ahead down Haywood Road past coffee shops and breweries and murals I'd watched change over 4 decades. Blue Ridge Retirement Living sat on a hill near Tunnel Road, a cluster of brick buildings surrounded by gardens and walking paths. Not a nursing home, independent living. A community of people who decided they wanted less space and more freedom. My unit was 2B, second floor. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a small kitchen, and a living room with a wide window looking east toward the mountains. It was perfect. The movers brought everything up in an hour. Ruth arrived carrying a casserole and wine. "Housewarming," she said, grinning. "You're not allowed to refuse." We unpacked together, Emma, Vanessa, Linda, Ruth, and me. Jake set up his speaker and played music I didn't recognize but didn't mind. We hung curtains, arranged furniture, stacked books. Emma placed the teapot on the kitchen counter right next to the window where morning light would hit it. By 4 o'clock, the apartment looked like a home. I stood at the window and looked out at the mountains, blue and hazy in the July heat, older than memory, constant. Behind me, I could hear laughter, Emma showing Ruth a sketch, Vanessa asking where dish towels went, Linda opening wine. My phone buzzed, an email from Patricia. Dorothy Buncombe County Superior Court has officially dismissed Brandon's guardianship petition. Judge reviewed Dr. Morris's report, the financial evidence and documentation of your legal capacity. Case closed. No appeal filed. You're free. Patricia. I read it twice, then set the phone down and closed my eyes. Free. Not vindicated, not victorious, just free. Grandma. Emma's voice soft. You okay? I opened my eyes and smiled. Yeah, honey, I'm okay. Ruth raised her wine glass. To new beginnings. We toasted with mismatched glasses, wine water, and Jake's root beer. The apartment smelled like casserole and fresh paint and possibility. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my new living room. The furniture was arranged differently. The walls were bare. I'd hang pictures later, but for now I liked the emptiness. It felt like a blank page. I made tea. Not Earl Grey chamomile, something gentler. I poured it into a mug and sat by the window watching the mountains fade into dusk. Somewhere in West Asheville, a new family was moving into my old house painting over wallpaper filling rooms with their own laughter and ordinary days. They'd never know what had happened there. They didn't need to. Somewhere across town, Brandon was alone in a house he couldn't afford, staring at bank accounts he couldn't access, realizing control was an illusion. And here, in apartment 2B, I was beginning again. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 weeks ago, the one who'd served tea with shaking hands and pretended not to hear her son call her dead weight. The one who'd counted ceiling cracks and wondered if she was losing her mind. I wasn't that woman anymore. I finished my tea, washed the cup, and placed it on the drying rack next to the teapot. Tomorrow I'd meet my neighbors, walk the garden paths, call Emma and make lunch plans. Start the life I'd been too afraid to imagine. But tonight I just sat in the quiet of my new home and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because someone was protecting me, because I'd protected myself. Outside, the mountains stood dark against the summer sky and the first stars began to appear. I was 74 years old, and I was just getting started. Monday, July 15th, 2024. I woke up at 74 in a place I'd lived for only 9 days. It felt more like home than anywhere I'd been in decades. The morning light came through the window, soft and golden. I made coffee in my small kitchen and took it to the window seat. Below, a woman walked a small dog. 2 men sat on a bench laughing. A community. Family by choice. My phone buzzed. Emma, happy birthday, Grandma. Jake and I are coming by at 10. Don't make plans. I smiled. The best plans were the ones other people made when they wanted to show they cared. At 10, the doorbell rang. Emma held a jar of Wildflowers, Black-Eyed Susans, and Queen Anne's lace. Jake carried a flat-wrapped package awkwardly. Happy birthday, Emma said, hugging me. Jake mumbled, Happy birthday, Grandma. I unwrapped the package carefully. The drawing Emma had made the chessboard, the woman with 2 pieces facing a full army poised to win. She'd had it framed. "I wanted you to have it," Emma said, "to remember." I touched the glass. "I won't forget." We sat in the living room and drank lemonade. Jake told me about baseball practice. Emma showed me new sketches. We didn't talk about Brandon. We didn't need to. At 11, Linda arrived with a lemon cake, homemade, still warm. Ruth came 20 minutes later with wine. Gloria and Evelyn arrived together carrying a potted orchid and a card. "You're stuck with us now," Gloria said, grinning. We sat around my small dining table and ate cake and drank wine and told stories. It was loud and chaotic and perfect. At 2 o'clock, my phone rang. Patricia. "Happy birthday, Dorothy. I have news. The house sold. Closing went through this morning. Funds transferred to the irrevocable trust as specified. 50% to education accounts for Emma and Jake. 50% to the Western North Carolina Women's Shelter. Brandon has no access, no claim, no recourse." I closed my eyes. "It's done then." "It's done. You're free. Legally, financially, completely." After I hung up, I stood at the window for a long time. Free. The word still felt strange, like a language I was learning to speak. At 4 o'clock, after everyone left, I checked my mailbox. A card from Linda, a postcard from an old coworker, and a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Brandon's handwriting. I stood in the hallway holding it, feeling its weight. 1 page, maybe 2. Part of me wanted to open it. Part of me wanted to know if it was apology justification or another attempt at control. But the bigger part, the part that had learned I didn't owe anyone my immediate attention, decided I didn't need to know. Not today. I walked upstairs, placed the letter on my desk unopened, and left it there. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe never. The choice was mine, and that was enough. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened the journal Patricia had given me. Tonight, I wrote something different. They asked why I was still alive, as if my existence were an inconvenience. Now I can answer. I'm alive to remember my own name. Dorothy Brennan. Not someone's mother, not someone's burden. Just Dorothy. I'm alive to clear my own table, to choose my own tea, to decide who gets a key to my door and who doesn't. I'm alive to keep the door open for people who knock with clean hands and open hearts, and to close it firmly and without guilt for those who don't. I'm alive because I fought for it, because I stopped waiting for permission to take up space, because I learned that love isn't obedience and family isn't obligation. I'm alive because I chose to be. I closed the journal and looked around. The orchid from Gloria sat on the windowsill. The framed chessboard leaned against the wall. The teapot gleamed in the fading light. On the counter, a slice of lemon cake waited, wrapped in foil with Linda's note, "For breakfast tomorrow. You're allowed." I smiled. The story wasn't over. Healing wasn't a destination. It was a process, slow and messy and non-linear. There would be hard days ahead. Days when I'd doubt myself, wonder if I'd made the right choices. But this chapter was mine. I'd fought for it. I'd stood in a clinic and proven my competence. I'd sat across from a son who'd stolen from me and told him no. I'd walked away from a house full of ghosts and into a life I'd built with my own hands. And today, on my 74th birthday, I wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to celebrate. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good kind Ruth had brought, not the cheap stuff I used to buy out of habit. I sat by the window and watched the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink and purple. Somewhere out there, Brandon was reading bank statements and realizing the money was gone. Somewhere out there, a new family was making dinner in my old kitchen. And here, in apartment 2B, I was making a different kind of dinner, a quiet one, a peaceful one. I raised my glass to the mountains, to the empty room, to the woman in the window reflection. "Happy birthday, Dorothy," I said out loud. And for the first time in decades, I meant it. The evening stretched long and gentle. I didn't check my phone. I didn't open the letter. I didn't worry about tomorrow. I just sat in the quiet of my own home, surrounded by gifts from people who'd chosen to love me, and felt something I'd almost forgotten. Whole. Not healed, not fixed, not perfect, but whole. And that, I realized, was the best birthday gift I'd ever given myself. 3 months after my 74th birthday, I finally gathered the courage to write down the lesson life taught me far too late. If you're listening to this now, please don't repeat my mistakes. Don't wait until you're standing alone in your own kitchen, hearing your child speak about you as if you are nothing more than a burden. For most of my life, I believe sacrifice was simply what a mother was meant to do. I gave my time, my savings, my patience, and my trust. But I confused obligation with love. Many grandma stories begin exactly this way, quiet sacrifices that slowly become invisible. And many family drama stories grow from the painful moment when we realize respect has quietly disappeared. There were many nights when I prayed and asked God why things had unfolded this way. Over time, I understood something important. Sometimes God does not remove the pain, but He gives us the strength to endure it. In many grandma stories, dignity is something we rediscover after betrayal. And in many family drama stories, the hardest lessons become the most important ones. If this story made you reflect on your own life, I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. What would you do in a situation like this? Please share your perspective in the comments. If stories like these resonate with you, consider sharing this video and subscribing so you don't miss more family drama stories and grandma stories in the future. Thank you sincerely for staying with me all the way to the end. And a gentle note, some upcoming stories may include fictionalized elements created for educational storytelling. If that kind of content isn't for you, you are always free to step away and choose something that feels more suitable for you.